Saygıdeğer katılımcılarımız, ilk panelimize geçiyoruz. Sizleri daha fazla bekletmeden, dünyada değişen güç dengeleri, artan korumacılık eğilimleri, yeşil dönüşüm ve dijitalleşmenin ortaya çıkardığı yeni talepler, Türkiye makine sektörünü, rekabet gücünü korumak ve yükselen pazarda büyümek için stratejik bir yaklaşım geliştirmeye yöneltiyor. Çok kutuplu yeni dünya düzeninde makine sanayi başlığı altında zirvemizin ilk panelinde bu gelişmelere ışık tutmaya çalışacağız. Paneli yönetmek üzere MAKVET Yönetim Kurulu üyesi Sayın Ali Eren'i, panel konuşmacılarımız olarak Boğaziçi Üniversitesi öğretim üyesi Doktor Sayın Ahmet Söylemezoğlu, Almanya İstanbul Başkonsolosu Sayın Doktor Regine Grimberger, Ekonomi ve Dış Politika Araştırmalar Merkezi EDAM Direktörü Sayın Sinan Ülgen ve Brüksel'den misafirimiz olan MAKVET'in de Türkiye'yi temsilen üyesi bulunduğu Konfederasyon Orgalım Genel Direktörü Sayın Doktor Ulrik Adam'ı sahneye davet ediyorum. Buyurun efendim.
Thank you very much, Tufan, for extending me the opportunity to be moderating this very important panel today. Actually, I think we all are aware that we are living in a period that is very important point in history, which is moving from the unipolar world order towards a multipolar world order. This is, of course, a big challenge for our industries because we have to change the rules and regulations and all the framework of the operating system in the world are changing, and we have to adjust this accordingly. Bu arada Sayın Konsolosumuz da teşrif ettiler. Welcome. Please. So especially we are just at the beginning, so you didn't miss anything.
Sorry for the delay.
Welcome again. And as I said, I am very privileged to be moderating this very important subject today, especially with those distinguished guests and panel speakers that are very knowledgeable in their fields, and I hope they will be shedding some insight and some light into this challenging situation that our industries are in at this point in history. Of course, the most important, one of the most important countries that Turkey has as partner land is Germany. And first, I should introduce Frau Dr. Regina Greenberger. She is the Consul General of German Republic to Istanbul. And our second guest is Ulrich Adam from Orgalim organization, which is an umbrella organization to our MAKVET in Turkey, and representing 1.7 trillion euros of turnover of the member companies in Europe. He certainly has something to say, and certainly has the power to say something here. And then we come to Ahmet Söylemezoğlu. Dr. Ahmet Söylemezoğlu is teaching presently at the Boğaziçi University, and he worked many years with the World Bank for the development of the third world countries, especially, and he has also a book called The World Economic Situation. So he has a book actually. Can I have the book? Book is over there, so I can show it to you. Küresel Ekonomi Düzeni, which he wrote, and ever since I read the book, it has been my reference book always at my bedside. Whenever there is something going on that I don't understand, I just look into the reference because it gives you the operational framework of how the world economy works. And therefore, so we are very privileged to have him also as a speaker today. And last but not least, Sinan Ülgen, founder and director of EDAM, which is makes strategic research work. I should say a think tank operating out of Turkey. And he is also very experienced in Europe-Turkey relations and as well as the political, as well as the economic relationships between Europe, Turkey, and other countries. So let us start then. I would like to start with a very important country, which is Germany. This is important for Turkey because our major export volume goes to Germany. And in Germany is also very hard hit because of this multipolarity and also the war situation, especially the three industries, the steel industry, the automotive industry, and the chemical industry are very hard hit in that. Plus, politically, there are some inclinational changes in the German public's opinion, where when we look at the last polls, it's going towards the right a little bit. So maybe, Regina, what's going on in Germany?
Yeah, if I would just know. So, but thank you for also inviting me to this panel and presenting the German position and also ideas. So, dear colleagues on the podium and ladies and gentlemen, I start with a claim, and that is Germany remains a core anchor of the European economy and political decision making, and it is a trusted framework setter for industrial standards, for supply chain resilience and market access across the EU. As a technology leader, Germany drives key innovation fields, mainly the digitization of production, what we call Industry 4.0, and then also advanced robotics, smart manufacturing, and applied AI. You know perhaps that I have served as Germany's cyber ambassador in my previous assignment, and one of my tasks was to strengthen awareness at home that Germany cannot rely on others to provide them with the necessary digital tools. Germany, there is a saying, if you have a vision, you have to see a doctor. But I think this is actually the time to be visionary, to invest in innovation, also in future technologies, and to reach the objective of digital sovereignty. But as a cyber ambassador, again, I had also to raise awareness abroad that working on standards, international law, and legal frameworks is in the interest of all countries that are not digital superpowers themselves, so like us, like Germany. If we don't want to be rule takers, but rule makers, we must team up and cooperate in order to leverage the power of our markets. In this sense, Germany is actively shaping Europe's competitiveness debate vis-à-vis China. This includes diversification, neutral technology upgrading, and secure supply chains. And here, Turkey is a key partner. Also, the German Mittelstand model, so family-owned manufacturers with high specialization, offer strong points of connection with Turkey's dynamic and export-oriented industrial base. And these are just two fields which offer ample opportunities to work together. I would like to say something on what I expect to be the game in town in the coming years, and that is moving out of fossil fuels and reducing asymmetric dependencies by more sustainable designs and by reinserting materials in the production process. This is called the EU Green Deal, and it is transforming industrial production. It requires lower emissions, energy efficiency upgrades, and circular product design. And this is not just regulation. This is in the core an innovation agenda. The European regulation will set new standards for durability, repairability, reuse, and recycling across machinery components and industrial equipment. And the digital product passport, this is a new political instrument, will require transparent traceability for materials, carbon footprint, and life cycle data. And this creates new markets for digital manufacturing solutions, for sensors, software, and also data integration. German companies are currently developing these platforms and also certification models. And again, this is an ideal space for joint projects with Turkish industry clusters. The green transformation will also lead to a retooling of factories, and Turkish machinery producers, very strong in the market, can position themselves as solution providers to Europe's decarbonization need. So there is, I think I should say something also about the EU trajectory, and I think that Turkey's goal of full EU membership provides strong incentives to adopt upcoming EU sustainability and data standards early and to become a competitive supplier base into Europe's green markets. Turkey's customs union integration, even now and not modernized, but in several regards outdated. This integration ensures regulatory alignment and accelerates technology transfer, a structural advantage most other partners do not have. And I wonder if Sinan Bey can confirm this. A joint German-Turkish innovation projects can strengthen both countries' position in global manufacturing value chain. Another game in town is, of course, the uptick in the defense industry. And also here I see a lot of opportunities in the future. The Russian invasion in Ukraine has triggered some rethinking in Germany, as you know. In this process, which we call Zeitenwende, the priorities shifted towards more security and defense spending, including a new Sondervermögen, a special budget for the Bundeswehr, for our armed forces. Together with NATO modernization and an increased European defense spending, this generates demand for high-precision mechanical systems, dual-use technologies, and supply chain partnerships. Turkey has strong capabilities in aerospace, ground systems, and in integrated manufacturing, and Germany brings system engineering, certification, and quality assurance. This is a synergy zone and not a competition zone. I perhaps leave it with this, but I would like to close with saying the challenge is not merely to remain competitive. It is to redefine competitiveness through sustainability, resilience, and advanced engineering. And here we have complementary strengths to shape this together.
Thank you very much, Regina. You also brought about the Green Deal subject, which is for which Germany has done a great deal of work. But as I think now, the White House emissions become more important than the greenhouse emissions these days. So I don't know how this will, continue with the Green Deal. This is different subject. With that note, I would like to have the take of our industries. What should I say? The big power of the industry in Europe, which is a technological industrial sector, as I said, turning over 1.7 trillion euros a year. And I'm sure that we have listened to what the bureaucracy and the governmental situation in Germany and the roadmap. And does the industry have a roadmap to take up the challenges of the multipolar world order, as they say?
Thank you. Yes, we do have a strategy, we do have a vision in Brussels as European technology industries to face the massive challenges that we've been talking about this morning. And these challenges, just to start with, just to remind you how seriously threatened our industrial competitiveness is and how new this situation is. The President mentioned it in his opening remarks. We are Europe, the European Union, but also our closer partners, and that includes Turkey, are very much caught in the middle in the trap between the new power game between the US and China. And I think that has really happened to us in probably one of the worst moments, because the industry has been struggling for the last 3 years. So the Europe's technologies industries, we've gone with a revenue loss, an aggregate revenue loss in the last 3 years of minus 6.7% in turnover. That is more than we experienced in the financial crisis. That is more than we experienced in the COVID crisis. And the length of this crisis shows that this is not just a business cycle downturn, but this is also a structural challenge that we need to reimagine, re-envisage, and reshape our industrial competitiveness in Europe moving forward. That is the big challenge. That is what we're working on in Brussels, together with member states and with the European institutions. And why is this challenge so massive? Because the European model has always been one in a fundamental belief in a multilateral system, in a partnership approach, and that's been completely upended by particularly our American and Chinese friends. So we need to reorient ourselves. We're seeing that in this decline, we need to find the right policy answers now, much as you have your own challenges in Turkey, mainly driven by inflation and not being competitive on a price base in the export model. We also, and it was said, we cannot simply go to a model of greater isolationism and self-sufficiency without eroding our industrial production base. And Regina mentioned it, the Mittelstand model of Germany is very much one driven by SMEs, by global champions, global hidden champions that cannot just simply adopt a local for local model. They need a competitive base in Europe and then export. But this is something that China has been very successful in emulating and essentially taking, almost like for Turkey as well, taking it to a whole new level. And if I may echo a commentary I read in the Financial Times this morning by Robin Harding, and he said that the challenge with China is that, I quote, "There's nothing that China wants to import. There's nothing it does not believe it can make better and cheaper. And there's nothing for which it wants to rely on foreigners a single day longer than it has to." And that essentially is a model of self-sufficiency, isolationism, which begs the question, how are we going to trade with China tomorrow? And with the US, as you know, we have high challenges due to the tariff regime, which is a real challenge, particularly for the German machinery industry. The steel and aluminium derivative tariffs, we're talking about 50% tariffs on steel and aluminium products in complex machines. And this drives up costs, this drives up compliance costs, and it's hitting us in a very weak moment. So again, the challenge is tremendous. We have structural challenges in Europe, whether it is, the raw material vulnerabilities, the low levels of foreign direct investment, high energy prices, particularly in Germany. We have a demographic challenge, much more than you have in Turkey. So the whole package is a difficult one to take for the industry. And that drives me to the second point: what can the European Union do in such a situation? And the debate in Brussels at the moment very much is, there's a good solution, we believe, which is really focusing as was said again, on competitiveness, competitiveness, and competitiveness. We really need to make it easier and less costly and burdensome in Europe to do business and to manufacture things. And there's what I would call the bad solution, which, however, I must admit as well, must be part of the package as well, unfortunately, and that is a rising threat, a rising drive, even in Brussels and Europe, towards protectionism. And just to explore on these 2 points, the good solution, competitiveness, and the bad solution. On the good solution, we see a lot of things, positive things happening in Brussels in terms of a clear industrial visions. It was mentioned, the Green Deal, the Clean Industrial Deal. Europe really has a lot of competitive edge in clean tech solutions, which we need and want to export. So that is a competitive edge we really should bet on. But we also need to bet on simplification. The European Union has really embarked in the past 12 months on an unprecedented simplification wave to make it easier. Some of the regulation has been too burdensome, and that is something as well we hope that Turkey will take up and go along with in terms of these omnibus initiatives that the EU has started in all policy fields, whether it's in industrial policy, sustainable reporting, digital policies. So there's a lot of positive things happening. We're seeing a lot of initiatives in Brussels to improve the functioning of the single market. Again, these are all very positive developments. And also bet more on research and innovation with more money, European money going into the Competitiveness Fund and the Horizon program. So a lot of positive things happening there, but I think on the other hand, the problem is what I would call the bad solution. And unfortunately, we in the industry need to acknowledge some things has to happen there. Europe, in Brussels, the word is very much that we've been naive. We've been too much betting on the multilateral system, and we need to acknowledge it is in shatters or it is taking a break. We don't know how long it will last. So the new buzzword in Brussels is this strange paradoxical word of open strategic autonomy. But I think we're at risk of forgetting the openness. We're looking far more to strategic autonomy. And we will see measures coming from the European Union in the coming months that will tighten the grip in terms of closing the single market to foreign companies or even to foreign powers, which we think are not playing by the rules. And that is a necessary step, but we need to be careful because we still need the openness. One particular example will be public procurement. And in public procurement, we will see that the EU and member states will tighten the criteria for foreign companies to bid. We just read this morning that even Sweden, traditionally the far most open economy in the world, will start to have much tighter public procurement rules. But I think with a view to Turkey as well, it's very important that public procurement or local content criteria made in Europe pushed by the European Union does not mean made in the EU, but it means made in Europe. And that's something we in Orgalim want to push, that all our neighboring and partnering countries, whether it is the UK, Norway, Switzerland, but also Turkey, will be included in, so to say, a broader partnership and friendship approach, so that these countries will, not be hit by the increasing protectionist policies that we will see. And again, these policies will go way beyond public procurement. We will have a European economic security doctrine published next week, and we have already a very strong anti-coercion tool in the drawer that DG Trade has not yet used. So the European Union at the moment, it's beefing up its toolbox to make sure we are prepared to defend ourselves in this new multipolar world, but we still need to and want to keep a belief in openness, in multilateralism, and we need it because particularly in the technology industries, we're dependent on exports, market access. So that is roughly the difficult, challenging situation where we are in Brussels right now.
Thank you very much, Ulrich. We have a glimpse of what the European industry has as a roadmap, so to speak, to take up these challenges of the multipolar world order. Actually, when we say multipolar world order, we are moving from a unipolar world order into a multipolar world order. But the problem is, I think there is a multipolarity, but there is no order. I mean, it is actually not a multipolar world order. It is multipolar, but without order. I think this is the problem for us. If there is an order, actually, we can adjust ourselves. I mean, our industries are agile enough, the European as well as, especially the Turkish industry is agile enough to adjust itself to different regulations, to different rules, which we have actually in Turkey. We have shown it as our accession to talks with the European Union started. And now we are partner and we are abiding all the commercial and technical requirements. But as I say, the order was there in the bipolar world after the Second World War, which is depicted in Ahmet's book in detail, very much detail, with the institutional architecture of the system. And when we talk about the world order, the order is the operating system, is sort of the operating system of the economy and also the politics. And there were set rules, there were institutions who overlooked those rules. I mean, this is also like the court, International Court of Justice is a part of the institutions, United Nations is an institution, and the World Trade Organization is an institution, World Bank, IMF, all these are institutions that serve the purpose of keeping the regulations intact and controlling and overlooking the world order. But now we see there is not these institutions are still there, they are still working, but we see that their function is getting less and less, and it goes, they are overruled by some bigger powers, and they are helpless in cases, in politics as well as in economics sometimes. And for that we have now a specialist here, Mr. Dr. Söylemezoğlu. He will give us now maybe the blueprints of the new world order, looking into the multipolar world.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the MACFET board and the organizers for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts in the company of such a distinguished panels, and to an audience, which is a powerful testimony to the Turkey's industrial capacity and the spectrum of Turkish industrial activities. This needs to be really underlined, because when you look at this üyelik sponsors, you see the variety of the industries that we have some critical mass that they can form an association, and these associations can get together and establish an umbrella organization. This is really a testimony to our capacity, and I really would like to salute everyone in the audience. Had I known that Ali, I say Ali because he's my classmate from Boğaziçi, Ali was going to make such a big advertisement of my book, I would have alerted the Remzi Kitabevi to open a stand here and arrange a book signing for me, and then we move. Well, anyway, let's look at what is being under stress in the world at the moment. The world has tried twice to set up an order after two big conflicts. The first one, with the Treaty of Versailles, failed spectacularly. And in fact, Keynes, who was attending the conference, left the conference and wrote, in my opinion, one of his best books, Economic Consequences of Peace. By the way, this book, incidentally, was translated into Turkish by Fethi Okyar when he was exiled in Malta. And when he returned from Malta, he shared the book with Atatürk. And Atatürk, being a bookworm as he was, he read it and impressed very much with the book and drew parallels with the Treaty of Versailles and the Treaty of Sèvres, and asked all of his colleagues and close circuit to read this book. So this also gives some sort of an insight as how Turkish Republic was established, while fighting, but also thinking. This is very important. Now, the First War could not establish an order and yielded a much bigger conflict. The second conflict, Keynes again participated, this time successfully to a certain extent. I say to a certain extent because he managed to convince the Allies to assume the responsibility of financing European reconstruction. But he failed to convince Americans to agree on a currency that is exclusively to be used for international transactions. And he further asked that no country should have a surplus, which would then require the surplus countries to either to spend this surplus either by importing or by making investments. Hence, had we had that system now, we would not have this persistent Chinese surpluses, which is the main contention point today. But nonetheless, as Ali mentioned, the Bretton Woods managed to set up organizations which basically underpin the international economic activities. But this order right now is being challenged as we witness. And it's being challenged by the very power that really pushed this order onto the world. So the architect of this order is trying to dismantle this order. So this is a rather strange situation. But that, at the time in 1945, the United States had the 75% of the total gold stocks of the world and the 75% of the total manufacturing capacity of the world as well. So they had no doubt that they would sell anything they want to anywhere. So we don't, and also on top of that, they were the almost sole source of, or they became almost sole source of scientific foundry of the world. Now the things changed. Now let's look at this thing from our perspective, from Turkish perspective, or any, probably from any other country's perspective. Now what would be a country's objective function? I can say function because we have a lot of engineers in this room, right? So we would like to optimize our objective function. And what would be the arguments of this objective function? Well, basically from our perspective, we have three needs. One is, well, on top of our security concerns, we need to access markets. We need markets for our goods, and we need to be able to access to them. The second is we need capital, because we are a capital scarce country, and we need to be able to access to capital markets. The third, we need technical know-how, and also we need to maintain and flourish our linkages with the foundaries of the scientific knowledge around the world. So these are the arguments of the objective function. But we must also be aware of our constraints, because without which we cannot optimize our function. What are our constraints? Mainly our institutional capacity, our economic capacity. So we should not be carried away by rhetoric that is overwhelmingly optimistic and touches upon the chords of the national pride. And in Turkish, we call it hamaset. So we should be very careful about these things as well. Now let's revisit all these three elements that I just mentioned. Markets. Where are the markets? Now we know that it is almost impossible to sell anything to China. Everybody knows this, right? Then where to look for? And I would then point to you that there are emerging markets, especially in Africa. We must be also mindful of the fact that some very strong demographic trends. For example, in 1950, only 9% of the total world population was African. Right now, it's close to 20%. By the end of this century, it will be 40%. Almost half of the world population will be Africans. East Africa will have 300 million people more than China. Egypt will have more people than UK, Germany, Italy, France combined. There will be metropolitan areas such as Kinshasa, which is in shambles right now, which will have about 25, 30 million people. And the Africa right now have about $3 trillion of GDP. But it is growing faster than the rest of the world. So, and also the scale of economies and the abilities to maneuver in these markets is really suitable for us. It's small places. And so that's the market side. If you turn to capital, now we had the capital in the West, but now we have significant capital surplus of the China and East Asia, and also now we have the Gulf capital, which is looking beyond New York and London. This is why they are trying to buy land in Kanal Istanbul project. They are trying to buy things in Zambia and so forth. And you see that they are aggressively looking beyond the traditional capital market. So, and we do have good relations with them and historical relations with them. So this is another source. As to the scientific innovation and know-how, if you look at various indices, the Chinese universities now produce significantly more scientific output than those of the US universities. So you have new emerging scientific knowledge foundaries as well. So let me, maybe we can follow up in later on. So we have, in this multipolar world, we're going to manage. And we have these legacy institutions still there, Basel committees there, OECD is there, WTO is there. These are there, they are doing the norms. But from the European perspective, and I would mention this and close my remarks, we are almost an extension of a German industry or French industry, because we are extension of European industrial complex. They are our machine technology providers, they are our suppliers, and they are buyers of our product. So basically, there is a significant interest of Europe to maintain the competitiveness of Turkish industrial complex. Therefore, because we are in this boat together. And so if Turkish industries fail, that is now in a situation where it can also hurt European countries as well. So making this remark, then I would like to close and thank you, Ali. Maybe I overextended my time, I don't know.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
That's all right. Okay, thank you very much, Ahmet, for your insights into this multipolar system and your suggestions and how to move on. And you also mentioned the cooperation in the industrial complex, in the context of the industrial complex with Europe, brings us actually to the specialty of Sinan. And Sinan, how is the cooperation prospects with Europe now in the industrial platform facing this new situation? Okay, we know that we are already in cooperation with them, we are already partners, but the new system coming up towards us calls for something different than the existing one. What can it be?
Ali Bey, really I'd like to thank you first of all. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here addressing this audience. As Ahmet Hoca said, I just want to repeat, just looking behind, looking all the industries that are present here is really a testimony to the success, to the very vital role that your industry plays in Turkey's economic diversification and its really industrial role globally. So again, a big honor. Let me start by, I'll try to do three things as I answer Ali Eren's question. First of all, I'll tell you very, superficially, given that we have little time, how the world has changed. And then what it means for us as a country, and then what it means for you as the industry. That's basically how I'll try to structure my thoughts. Now, very briefly, how the world has changed. You've already heard from the panel, many insightful comments how it has changed. But I just want to pick two major themes from that. The first is that the post-war rules-based order that we learned in school, that we try to apply in our work, that we fundamentally believed in, we were part of that system, is now being dismantled. Where this will end, we don't know yet. It will depend about, domestic politics in a number of major countries. But it's being dismantled not just by the champion of that liberal world order, which is the United States. When you see these, the Trump-era tariffs, this is totally in violation of America's commitment to the multilateral world order. It violates the WTO commitments of that country, and the US does this again and again. So it's very clear violation. But it's not the US, and I'll just turn, here perhaps the arrow to some other countries that are near us. But the same thing is happening, not to the same degree, don't misunderstand me, but it's also happening in the EU. When you look at CBAM, it's difficult to argue that it's really, really compatible with, WTO rules. When you look at new regulations, like foreign direct investment screening regulation, again, it can be said that this is, it's difficult to see where this fits in the multilateral order. One could easily argue that it's a violation of the TRIPS agreement. Then this initiative made in Europe, which is about subsidizing or giving preference to local production. Again, that's also in violation, one could argue, about the GATT principles. So this dismantling of the rules-based order is not peculiar to the United States. It is a function of the type of world that we live in and the joint dynamic that moves both the EU and the US in this direction is economic security. So how do we ensure in this day and age our own economic security, how committed we shall be in the rules-based system, and how much distancing can we have from those rules which were generated, engineered for a different world. Let's be frank. There was a different world. And therefore, this perhaps distancing from that rules-based order is happening at a time when these geopolitical shocks, these geoeconomic shocks, war in Ukraine, the challenge of China, has created a different economic world. And therefore, we need to take stock of that and then draw the conclusions, and the conclusions that we generally draw, egregiously by the United States, somewhat less egregiously, but still, by the EU as well, and also by Turkey, is, well, how do we uphold our own economic security in this world? So that's, I think, one major point. The second major point is what happens to globalization. And there are different narratives. I don't believe in deglobalization. That's not what we see in the figures. Globalization is continuing. But it's continuing in a very transformed manner. And what is happening, to me, the most perhaps insightful take on what happens to globalization is fragmentation. Fragmentation under different blocks. There will be a China-led bloc, there will be a US-led bloc, and there will be a European-led bloc. There will not be a transatlantic bloc if this is the direction of travel. So that's the second element that we need to take in mind as we start to think about what it means for us as Turkey. So there are a number of uncomfortable truths in terms of what it means for us. Because the dismantling of the rules-based order is pushing us towards a decision that so far, it seems to me, looking at our policymakers, we're unwilling to take. What is that decision? Today, the narrative is ultimately, and I'll paraphrase it, Turkey has its own strategic autonomy. It is a bridge country. It can do business with everybody. But this is the wrong take on what is happening. The new world is driving us towards a more fundamental decision. That fundamental decision is basically to choose. To choose our own future. Who we are fundamentally going to be partnering with. Because the narrative of we can do business with everybody is naive. That's not going to go very far in this new world. As we look at what is happening around us, we are going to be compelled, despite our own volition, our aspiration, the narrative is we don't want to choose. We want to do business with everybody. That's what Turkey is. Well, maybe not. Maybe we will be forced to choose. Because that is basically, the type of challenges that we'll need to address. And I'll give you a few examples why that is the case. The fundamental issue underlying that, why we need to choose, is about China. We need to choose how to treat China. We need to decide how we're going to treat China. Is China a partner with us? Is it a rival? Is it an economic threat? Or is it an economic partner? That is the fundamental question that we are faced with. Because that is the fundamental question that our core economic partner, and Ahmet Hoca said it very eloquently, Turkey is an extension of the European industrial ecosystem. So if our European partners are faced with this question, by extension, we are also faced with that question. And if we refuse to answer that question, if we continue with our natural inclination to say, oh, we don't want to answer that, we want to do business with everybody, we're going to land somewhere that we don't like. That's my message. So it's really about committing ourselves to a future of partnership with our core ecosystem, which is the European ecosystem. Our trade with Europe, our technology comes from Europe. Our capital, our financing, comes from Europe. So fundamentally, it's about integrating more and more with this ecosystem. And if we don't do that, if we're not allowed to do that, and here I'll separate because it's not about us choosing, it's also about the EU choosing Turkey as their natural partner, and I'll come to that at the end of my remarks. This cannot be an unilateral aspiration. It has to be a joint aspiration. It has to be a joint vision about how we want to construct our economic future, how we're going to improve our economic security. Now, if we don't choose this, then some of the initiatives that's been talked about on this panel, made in Europe, will Turkey be part of made in Europe or not? Well, it's going to depend on us about how we shape our own stance towards this new world, how we treat China and so on. So modernization of the customs union, same thing. So fundamentally, this is where we are being led, and there is a huge opportunity in this. Don't take this as only on the side of a threat. The huge opportunity is if what I'm saying is true, if what I'm saying is that the future is a future where we're going to see the emergence of 3 blocks, and the distance between those blocks will grow. Business between those blocks will decrease, trade investment will decrease, but business, trade, and investment within those blocks will increase. That's the future that I'm talking about when I speak about a fragmented globalization. If that is indeed the case, Turkey has a huge opportunity. Because sitting in Brussels, in Paris, in Berlin, and looking around the world, a world where there's a need to de-risk from China, Turkey becomes the natural answer. Embedding Turkey in that ecosystem, partnering with Turkey, becomes the natural solution. Sitting there. So that is the huge opportunity for us. As the supply chains are evolving, as they are changing, Turkey is the natural answer to all those challenges, sitting from those capitals in Europe. But saying this, and I'm sure this is already in the talking points of Turkish policymakers when they travel to Europe, but there's a deficiency. We cannot take this as a passive argument. There are things that we also need to do on our side, and same that the Europeans will need to do on their side if they want to make this a reality, this type of joint economic future. I'll end here and I'll speak perhaps a few minutes about what needs to happen in the second round if we have time. Thank you.
Okay, as I understand from your comments that Turkey's only alternative is Europe to cooperate in order to overcome these challenges of the new world order, multipolar world, China, and competition coming from that direction. And then I should take that point and directly go to Regina and say, are you ready to welcome Turkey for more business? I mean, we have I think 22 billion euros of exports to Germany now. This is peanuts. I mean, this is peanuts. The trade volume should be actually at least 50 billion. So are you ready to take it?
Okay.
Take Turkey as an opportunity.
Yeah, you try to corner me here, but actually what I have to say is that, I mean, Sinan made the case very convincingly, but the choice is not Europe, it's also Turkey that has to choose this European path. And I would rather like to present, let's say, 4 additional arguments why you should choose the European partner. And the first one is there is a lot of path dependency in all economic activity, and you all can look into your books and see where did your past profit, your past success come from. So I think that leads you to Europe. The second one is there is no country like Turkey, like Germany, that is big enough to compete with China. We have to team up. We have to team up. There is no alternative to this. The third argument is, and also what Sinan said, I would subscribe it, so, and also you said it, Ulrich, the security issue in the economic activities has grown, and that is partially also because of digitization and online, going online, because this means that our activities cannot be protected by the border. Everything happens in cyberspace, and there are very strong adversaries, and China is one of them. And the fourth element I would like, or the fourth argument I would like to mention is what the European Union has in mind is an economic and societal model that works for all and everybody. So, according to Immanuel Kant, would it work if everyone would apply it? I would say the European model would work. Would the Chinese model work? I don't know. So these are my 4 arguments.
Okay, thank you very much, Regina. And here we come to Ulrich. What are you willing to offer to Turkey to take Turkey as a good potential partner to take up the challenges of the multipolar world? As Sinan said, Turkey is very well equipped. We are an industrial nation, and so what is in the partnership for Turkey in the EU?
Yeah, thank you. I'm very happy to hear Sinan's passionate plea on, and would support that from the Orgalim perspective as well, indeed, that there's a lot of untapped potential in the EU-Turkey partnership. And I think now is the moment to come together indeed and revive that partnership. And unfortunately, politically, it is and remains a complex partnership, but I think it's a very stable and reliable partnership from an economic business point of view. And we have long-standing historical and cultural ties. So it's a good starting point. But one thing is, I think it needs to be driven probably more strongly from the business community, because politics here may not always be the power broker, given the complexity of certain political questions in the relationship. But I see great potential in really reinvigorating and modernizing the customs agreement. It's also, we're 30 years anniversary of the customs agreement, 20 years of accession talks. I think we need to move faster. Now is the time. We've heard the common challenges. There's a lot of common ground. And if you look at the customs agreement, again, there are certain prospects on the table of modernization that couldn't help Turkey navigate around some of the moves the EU is about to do. If we look at public procurement in the customs agreement or digital trade, this is something where we need to work harder to align the common understanding and make sure business can benefit apart from other areas, services, agriculture, dispute settlement. And from what I've read, I think the forecast, the beneficial potential of a modernized custom agreement for Turkey has been estimated as quite substantial in terms of GDP growth on both sides. So again, I think it's time to get our heads together and revive that. We had a successful EU-Turkey business summit last week in Brussels, and again, I think that was very much the takeaway message from last week's Monday summit, that despite or notwithstanding some of the complex political discussions that we may not be able to resolve as quickly as we want to, I think on the economic and business cooperation aspect, now is the time to work together, look at speeding up and modernizing the customs agreement because of the new new world or disorder that we're facing and the common strategic alignment that we see.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we should also mention here the visa problem that we have, that especially for the business people here, because I have known people who have their factories in Germany, for example.
Yes.
But they cannot go there because their visa, they have to wait for visa for several. I think we have a fast track in different occasions, but we have to speed it up a little bit.
In all occasions, actually. Business is a priority.
Okay, business is priority. So. Okay, we come to Ahmet. Ahmet, well, I would like to take Sinan's words as provocation to you, and maybe you can, Sinan wants to go the European way, the Western way. That's, of course, this is where we belong, but there are also very interesting opportunities, like in China with the Belt and Road Initiative, and they are investing heavily also in Turkey as elsewhere. And in lieu of the fact that we are on the road from the Asian market towards the European market, because I take we will not stop everything from China. Even so, we will have to do some business, because there are some parts of the industrial products that only China is delivering now. You know, when you deliver 40% of the industrial production, then you cannot come around certain things. So, what is the chance of the other alternative? Or can Turkey play actually in between the two blocks? Is it possible?
Yes. Well, anyway, going together in partnership with Europe is an easy path. But as we have proven so many times in history, Turkey has a very strong sense of resilience and survival instinct. So yes, it would be a lot easier for us and for Europe to face these challenges and also manage the dangers that can arise out of this fragmented world. This is really quite a dangerous world. Ultimately, these kinds of fragmentations can result in big, violent, armed conflicts. So that's easy. But if it is, as Sinan Bey mentioned, this is not just one-way street. If it is not going to be met, certainly Turkey is kind of a country that has a lot of options, alternatives. There will be some transaction costs to arrange, but I am sure that we can find our way to navigate. The thing about what Sinan Bey mentioned about sort of a mandatory way of choosing something, and it has also a mathematical foundation. You see, if you take the numbers or anything in mathematics, you have a wonderful property called transitive property, where you have hierarchical order of numbers, which means that if A is bigger than B, if B is bigger than C, that means A is bigger than C. So basically, this doesn't apply to human preferences. In other words, if Ahmet is a good friend of Mehmet, if Mehmet is a good friend of Elif, and Ahmet and Elif will get along well. So we cannot have this kind of world. We don't have this transitive property. So if you try to sort of navigate with everyone, anywhere, anytime, and ultimately you will get this hierarchical conflicts and you will hit certain walls. So it is ultimately, even if you don't make a choice now, you will be forced to make a choice down the road, which may not be a choice that you would like to have anyway. So in that sense, I agree with it. But I would like to point something for our fundamental problems. For example, for the problems that are voiced this morning about the competitiveness of the sector, our main problem is productivity problem. We must face this problem. especially the productivity of our public sector. For example, I am from Sivas. In Sivas University, Cumhuriyet Üniversitesi, there are 53,000 students. There are departments with no students, but the department had deputy, secretary, driver, and so forth. In our university system, there are close to 8 million students, which produce less STEM graduates, that is scientists, engineers, and so forth, than that of Vietnam, which has only 25% of Turkish higher education students. So where we put our money, what we get out of this, we need to ask these fundamental questions. We need to, for example, face head-on some politically sensational projects that you know them very well. And you need to question what would be the cost of these things. If the public sector is not productive, private sector cannot be productive. And there is another problem. In order to have all these, our fundamental economic problems, inflation and so forth, then you are reduced to only one instrument, which is monetary policy, interest rates, suppress exchange rates, and the cost is borne by you people. So whenever you have a policy maker, you must voice the productivity questions of the public sector. And I think we have a long way to go in that sense.
Thank you very much, Ahmet. Now I will leave the word to Sinan to make the closing remarks within maybe 3 minutes.
Definitely 3 minutes.
So you have a very broad, scope.
I have two messages that I want to draw on as I, conclude my remarks. One, about this need to choose. This is not a zero-white decision. We need to be sophisticated about this. It doesn't mean we will not do business with China. We will, of course, do business with China. Everybody does business with China. But the need to choose comes into play as to how we understand doing business with China. Let me give you one example. Today, one of the major areas of possible collaboration with China is in the electrical vehicles industry. And we are happy as a country that there are more and more announcements that Chinese manufacturers will come to Turkey and manufacture electric vehicles in this country, creating jobs and so on. Now, in a world where we don't have to choose, this is fine. In a world where we need to choose, we don't need to say no to China. We still say yes. But then we look at how we can adjust our norms, adjust our overall industrial policy in a way that fits our industrial policy future with the European Union. So we impose conditionality on Chinese investment. We ask them how they're going to bring know-how in this country, what sort of technology they will transfer, what sort of local content they will create here, because what we don't want in this world where we are forced to choose is a screwdriver operation. Because if it's a screwdriver operation, believe me, there are no prospect of exports of those manufactured vehicles to Europe. In a world where there's high protectionism against Chinese EV cars. So that's what I mean by being more sophisticated about our industrial policy choices in a world where we have to answer the China question. It's not we won't do business, but we have to stipulate new norms and rules about how we do business with China if we are going to integrate in this larger European ecosystem. That's number one. Number two is, There's a lot of responsibility on the European side as well in order to embrace Turkey. And already one remark has been named that I fully agree with wholeheartedly, is the modernization of the customs union. Back 30 years ago when we negotiated this agreement, and I'm happy to say that I was one of the 2 people that negotiated this on a daily basis, while in my younger days when I was posted to the Turkish mission to the EU. We were in the vanguard of economic integration with the EU. We were one, emerging country that had a customs union arrangement, which is a far advanced arrangement than a free trade agreement with the European Union. Today, the situation in terms of trade relationship between Turkey and the EU is anachronistic, it's egregious, it's incommensurate with the economic weight of those 2 partners. The EU has a more advanced trading arrangement with Vietnam. And Vietnam, I must say, is not the paradigm of democratization in the world. So all these, conditions about democratization, which are absolutely correct, if we talk about the path of accession, I think there's a lot more that Turkey should have done. I think our state of affairs regarding the rule of law needs vast improvement, but that's really more of a conditionality on the accession side, which I hope can be rejuvenated. But if we're talking about a joint economic future, there can be an upgraded customs union. And that's vital. That's vital not only for economic actors, that's also vital for the type of messaging, the symbolism that it's had. Because that would mean that both sides believe in a joint economic future. Today, we're even unable to send that message. The Commission asked for a mandate to start for the negotiations from the Council, therefore from the governments. Do you know when? In 2016. It's been waiting there for almost 10 years. That's totally unacceptable. And that is really the effort that we need to put into place to have that dynamic generated, which will create a lot of positivity. And I'll end on this note. A lot of positivity, a lot of improvements, but one point. Do you know, and this is anecdotal, there is a major exception in today's customs union which directly relates to your industry. Do you know what that is? It only concerns your industry. Major exception. The exception to the free movement of goods. We were able to negotiate back then an exception to second-hand machinery and cars. It's a major exception because it doesn't exist in the EU's own customs union. It exists only in the EU-Turkey customs union. And the initial negotiating position of the EU was to give us a 5-year exception. So from 1995 to 2000. We were able to negotiate to change those terms and have an open-ended exception. Now, in a modernized customs union, that's also going to change. But in the broad context, this is what we need to do. Thank you.
Sinan, thank you very much. With the closing remarks, we have surely not solved any problems here, but just presented the problems and presented the challenges to you. I hope you have gained something out of this conversation. And I thank you very much for your patience listening to us. And thank you to our guests for coming here, Ulrich, Regina, and to our local friends. Thank you very much. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day.
We would like to thank all the speakers of our panel and present the certificates of the sapling planted on their behalf. Değerli konuklarımıza, katılımcılarımıza çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Adlarına diktiğimiz ağaçların, fidanların sertifikaları için Sayın Bakanım ben sizden takdim etmenizi rica edecektim mümkünse. Bakan yardımcılarımızdan, önceki dönem bakan yardımcılarımızdan Sayın Hasan Büyük'te de takdim edecek. Efendim Ali Bey'inki.
Tamam, teşekkür ederim. Sağ ol. Sağ ol.
Hanımefendi.
Koleksiyona koyarsın. Koleksiyona koyarsın.
Kapatalım da.
Thank you very much.
Bir şey Çanakkale'de das sind wir haben Bäume.
Sayın Bakanım, çok memnun oldum. Sağ olun.
Ja, ja, auch.
Very good.
Sen bir de beraber fotoğraf alalım. And a picture all together, please.
Have a picture taken.